Hi, everybody. Welcome to English Digest. I'm Tom.
Hi, I'm Stephanie.
And we're going to continue with our literature unit in today's program. Remember, last time we introduced you to this month's featured work of literature, Anne of Green Gables, by the Canadian author Lucy Maud Montgomery, who we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about the actual author, her life and times, and how she came to write this book.
Yeah, in some ways, her story is very similar to Anne of Green Gables. That's not unusual. A lot of authors will actually use their own lives and their experiences, change them a little bit, and then write fictional pieces of fictional work after that. So we're going to find out more about Ms. Lucy Maud Montgomery, but as we always do, we're going to read through this unit first. Lucy Maud Montgomery was born on Prince Edward Island in 1874. When she was 21 months old, her mother died of tuberculosis. Her father left her with her grandparents and moved to Western Canada. As a child, Montgomery wrote stories and kept a journal, which she would continue throughout her life. In 1893, Montgomery earned a teacher's license from Prince of Wales College. She had a short teaching career and later attended Dalhousie University, becoming one of the few women of the time to pursue a university education. When her grandfather died in 1898, Montgomery returned to live with her grandmother. She published poems and stories that provided her with a modest income. Her first and most famous novel, Anne of Green Gables, was published in 1908 and became an immediate bestseller. She wrote 8 additional books in the Anne series. Montgomery wrote 21 novels and hundreds of short stories, essays, and poems, including The Story Girl, 1911, The Emily of New Moon trilogy, 1923 to 27, and The Blue Castle, 1926. In 1911, Montgomery married Reverend Ewan MacDonald. They moved to Ontario, Canada, and had 3 sons, one of whom was stillborn. This tragedy, along with an unhappy marriage, deeply affected Montgomery. Despite her success as a writer and the positive themes in her fiction, Montgomery suffered from depression. Her publisher also cheated her out of royalties, leading to a lawsuit that she eventually won. In 1935, Montgomery became an officer of the Order of the British Empire. 1 year after her death, in 1942, the Canadian government named her a person of national historic significance. Her works are still treasured and widely read around the world.
Okay, everybody, today we're going to talk about the author of Anne of Green Gables. The author of Anne of Green Gables is Lucy Maud Montgomery, and she was born on Prince Edward Island in 1874. Now, of course, you know, in Canada, there are provinces. In the United States, of course, we've got states, but in Canada, they've got provinces like Quebec, Ontario, Manitoba, Saskatchewan, etc. But she was born in Prince Edward Island, I should say on the island. We use the preposition on there if you talk about an island. Although I would not say that for Taiwan, though. I was born in Taiwan. I wouldn't say on Taiwan because Taiwan's pretty large.
Well, it also doesn't have the word island in the name. If you have the word island in the name, you're going to use on.
All right, you could say I was born on Orchid Island. You could say that.
Sure.
I was born in Taiwan, but the author here was born on Prince Edward Island way back in 1874. Now, when she was 21 months old, almost 2 years old, her mother died of tuberculosis, which is some kind of bacterial infection that affects the lungs mostly. So her mother was gone when she was just a kid. She probably didn't remember her. And her father left her with her grandparents and moved to Western Canada. So the father left and went out west to Alberta or something like that. Weather's good there in the fall. all. And so the father was left with her. This father left her, and so she was raised by her grandparents. And as a child, Montgomery wrote stories and kept a journal, which she would continue throughout her life. So yes, when she was a young kid, of course, growing up there with her grandparents, she wrote stories, and she also kept a journal, which you could also call a diary. She wrote in her journal every day, describing the events of her life and things like that, describing things, etc., etc. And she would do this all through her life. I do this as well. I keep a journal, writing down things that happen in my daily life. It's actually quite extensive. A lot of people do this. It's a lot of fun to make sure you get everything down in a journal somewhere.
Yeah, I have a journal too. I don't write every day though. I think with diary, we use that more for younger kids, especially girls writing in their secret diary. But after you get to be a little older, I only hear people talk about writing in a journal, just so you know. So she started writing as a kid and probably had a lot of imaginative stories come out of her at that time. If you keep a journal, I congratulate you. It's hard to write all the time. I try to write down the great things in my life that happen. And I also print out my email to friends and family because in my emails, there's lots of stuff. And then I put those in binders. I have binders of email.
Wow, it's a lot of paper.
Yeah, it is. In 1893, Montgomery earned a teacher's license from Prince of Wales College. So if you're earning a degree is different than a license. A license gives you the authority to do something or carry on a trade or maybe to even own a gun. You have to have a gun license to have a gun in America. You don't have that here, so don't worry. If you open up a restaurant, you typically have to have a license to sell liquor, a liquor license. Here, she got her teacher's license or permission or authority to be a teacher. Now, she had a short teaching career and later attended Dalhousie University. That is a real university that exists today. I was looking it up online and I found a video where some of the students were giving advice to young freshmen coming in. It looks like it's kind of a small university, kind of nice. And she became one of the few women of the time, remember, she lived quite a while ago, to pursue a university education. It was really unusual back then. Actually, my grandmother on my dad's side, she earned her degree too.
Indeed. My grandmother went to the University of Iowa and got a teacher's degree as well. So I don't know if that was uncommon at the time. But in any case, yes, she went to Dalhousie. Is that what you called it?
Dalhousie, yeah.
I think that's in Halifax, Nova Scotia, if I'm not mistaken. And indeed, she got a university education, which was kind of unusual at the time for women. Now, moving on to the next paragraph, it says, when her grandfather died in 1898, Montgomery returned to live with her grandmother. Okay, so she was living with her grandfather, but he passed away, so she had to move someplace, so she went back to live with her grandmother, and she published poems and stories that provided her with a modest income.
Sounds just like Anne of Green Gables. Remember, Matthew has a heart attack, and she goes back to live with Marilla. Yeah.
Very similar. So you could almost say that Anne of Green Gables is a semi-autobiographical novel where she's actually writing about herself, not, of course, 100%. Otherwise, it would be an autobiography. But in this case, it's kind of based on the events of her childhood or things like that. And here we've got the word modest, and that just means you don't really brag about yourself usually. Oh, you shouldn't be so modest. You're such a smart person. Don't keep calling yourself average or ordinary. But in this particular case, modest means something slightly different. It just means, well, not a lot. Not small, not great, but just enough to get by.
Not an expensive something, I would say. If people often will say, oh, I have a modest home. It's not that big. It's not that expensive. Modest income. It's average, probably a little below average. But she's not living in poverty, but she wasn't making a lot of money from the poems and stories that she was able to publish. Now, back then, remember, women were not writing too much either. And if they did write, they used a pseudonym, I should say. It's a fake name as an author, a pen name. We'll get to that. So her first and most famous novel, of course, would be Anne of Green Gables. But if you look into Anne of Green Gables, you're going to notice that she wrote sequels to that first novel. And so the story of Anne continues. So if you love Anne of Green Gables, don't worry. There are more stories with that character that you can pick up. So Anne of Green Gables was published back in 1908. I looked this up. You know, it's now been sold over 15 million times. So there are 50 million copies of the book, and it's been translated into 36 languages. Sadly, she's not benefiting from this, but I hope her kids, grandkids, great-grandkids are living off some of her money that she continues to earn off this book.
Well, we are going to find out that indeed she was kind of cheated out of royalties.
Terrible.
But she started a lawsuit and she actually won. We're going to find that out later on in our program. Good for her. She didn't get cheated out of that, but still lots of these books are circulating and being sold in modern times, and this is probably a book that's in the public domain, so you can probably download a free copy of this from the internet someplace. I might go to Project Gutenberg myself and look for a copy of it and maybe actually try to actually read this book. But my goodness, if I get hooked on Anne of Green Gables, I'm in luck because she published all sorts of extra sequels, as you mentioned, which are, you know, books in a series. The next one is the sequel, etc. So that might be pretty cool. And so there's a series of books here, 8 additional books. So I guess there are 9 books in the Anne of Green Gables series, The Adventures of Anne. So my goodness, you've got all sorts of stuff to read there if you become interested in that. And that brings us to about the midway point in today's lesson. So let's take a break right now, but please stay tuned. We'll be right back after we listen to our Chinese teacher.
Hello everyone, my name is Tina. 今天我们要介绍的主题呢是 Anne of Green Gables, 清秀佳人的作者。前面提到呢，她在21个月大的时候，母亲就死于结核病，所以爸爸把她呢就留给了她的祖父母。我们来看一下第一段中间的句子写着 As a child, Montgomery wrote stories and kept a journal.which she would continue throughout her life. 在这里提到她还是小孩子的时候呢，她就很喜欢撰写故事跟日记，而呢在这里用 which 来补充说明这件事情呢是她终其一生 throughout her life 她都一直持续在做的事情，在这里用 which 来连接前后两句的文意。第一段的最后一句提到 She had a short teaching career and later attended Dalhousie University, becoming one of the few women of the time to pursue a university education. 而她则有一段短暂的教书生涯，后来进入了 Dalhousie 大学就读，在当时则是呢少数可以接受大学教育的女子之一。我们来看一下 pursue 这个动词。pursue 呢，原本是有追赶跟追捕的意思，像是我们说警察追捕抢劫银行的罪犯，就可以说 The policeman pursued the bank robbers。不过在这里呢，则是解释成为进行或者是从事什么事情。举例来说，他下定决心要到国外求学，你就可以说He has set his heart on pursuing his studies abroad. 接着来看到第二段的第二个句子，在这里提到呢，他的祖父过世的时候回去，他跟祖母一起住。She published poems and stories that provided her with a modest income.他出版了一些诗集跟故事，而这些东西就提供给他一笔不会太高的收入给他。Modest 在这里是当作形容词解释成为不太多的。Prices tended to rise year by year. but at a modest rate， 指的就是物价呢年年上涨，不过它的幅度不会太大，也不会太多。不要忘记了 modest 还可以解释成为谦逊的跟审慎的意思。接着后面的句子提到 Her first and most famous novel, Anne of Green Gables, was published in 1908 and became an immediate bestseller. 在这里提到在1908年他出版的第一本小说就是清秀佳人，而一出版就成为畅销书。我们在这里可以说 to become an immediate bestseller。We're
going to take a quick break. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Okay, everybody, we shall continue with our lesson for today. Now, Montgomery wrote 21 novels and hundreds of short stories, essays, and poems, including The Story Girl, 1911, The Emily of New Moon trilogy, which was published between 1923 and 1927, and The Blue Castle, which was published in 1926. So she was a prolific writer, we could call her. She wrote, all sorts of novels here. If you like her style, you're in luck. She's got lots of novels there. You can probably find them someplace. But not only did she write novels, she also wrote short stories, which are probably collected together in a series of stories or something like a collection of stories.
Collection of short stories.
A collection of short stories.
In one book.
In one book, indeed. And she also wrote essays, in which she probably commented on certain aspects of society or something like that. You could probably find those online somewhere as well. She also wrote poems. And then we have some examples of her output here, The Story Girl, The Emily of New Moon trilogy, which of course would be 3 books in a series, and then The Blue Castle.
Right. So when you're talking about books and one character is featured in subsequent books or books that are published after the very first one, we'll often use that word series. If they're movies, we use sequels. We don't use series for movies. We do use series, though, for TV programs.
Sure.
So you kind of have to get used to the different ways we measure things. We use different measure words depending on what it is. So she did have 8 additional books after Anne of Green Gables came out. I saw Anne of Green Gables just the other day. I was in a bookstore, and it just is always so appealing. It looks like it would be a lot of fun, especially for preteens or teen-age kids. It's a great novel for your level of English, too. You can learn a lot of things that way. And I think reading novels is a much more, I don't know, entertaining way to learn a language than, say, taking a grammar class. But that's my opinion. So here we have a series of the Anne of Green Gables books. And like Tom said, she also wrote short stories. Short stories can be anywhere from maybe like 50 pages to, I would say a novel has to be at least 130 pages.
Sounds right.
But there's no real rule to that. Some authors just really like short stories. I liked science fiction short stories when I was younger. Ray Bradbury wrote a lot of science fiction short stories that were quick and interesting, and you didn't have to spend 4 days reading his novel to enjoy it. Okay, moving on, guys. We're looking at the last paragraph here. In 1911, Montgomery married someone who was a reverend. A reverend is a leader in a Christian church. Another word for reverend would be pastor, priest. His name was Ewan MacDonald. MacDonald here is a Scottish name. So they moved at that point to Ontario, Canada, and they had 3 sons. But sadly, one of her sons was was a stillborn birth. So if you're born, but you are already dead, you're stillborn. So if someone has a stillborn child, it's really hard because they typically will have 9 months of being pregnant, and that's what happens at the end, it's very sad.
This tragedy, along with an unhappy marriage, deeply affected Montgomery. So it's a tragedy to lose a child if you've been pregnant for a long time and you're looking forward to having a baby and then it comes out dead. Well, that can kind of make you kind of bummed out. So it was a tragedy here, a tragedy of something bad that happens to you, or it could happen to society as a whole, a tragedy. But in this particular case, losing a child, that's a tragedy. And then she was also in an unhappy marriage. She was not satisfied being married to this pastor. So it deeply affected her. She probably thought, gee, life is terrible. All these terrible things keep happening to me. So, my goodness, it deeply affected her. It maybe affected her writing as well.
Oh, it's funny, though, because what she writes is so uplifting and happy. So I think maybe she just kind of would use her imagination to get away from sadness. Yeah, a lot of people who are depressed write things that are depressing to read. Not her. Her stuff is very lively. So she had a bad marriage and was unhappy. There was no way to get away from that. Back then, women didn't have a lot of options. So despite her success as a writer and the positive themes in her fiction, she did suffer from depression. When you talk about themes of something, it's the subject. It could be the theme of a talk or a piece of writing, or your essay theme. What are you writing about in your essay? Or maybe even an art exhibition. What's the theme? A lot of people like to put themes in that sort of thing. Fiction is, of course, writing that isn't based on reality. It's been made up.
Right, and I did want to mention that even though fiction is made up, they still need to get their information from someplace. So there is a certain amount of truth in fiction, and they do have to make sure things are correct in the real world. Otherwise, the story doesn't work. But of course, she's got these positive themes, these positive subjects in her fiction, but she still suffered from depression, which was probably really not recognized back then. And her publisher also cheated her out of royalties, leading to a lawsuit that she eventually won. Royalties, of course, is extra money you get when you sell your books. If you sell more books, then you get more royalties back. As long as the book is selling, you should continue to get royalties. But she was not getting them. She was cheated out of them, so she filed a lawsuit, which is some kind of legal action. You hire a lawyer and stuff like that. But she eventually won that, so she got some royalties later on.
She did. You'll actually still earn royalties today if you write, or maybe you're a singer, you're in a band. They get royalties every time one of their books or their albums sell. I'm glad she won. It's terrible trying to cheat people. Now, in 1935, she became an officer of the Order of the British Empire. Tom and I were not British, so we kind of looked this up. I've heard of people being awarded a knighthood or dame. Like if they're, the knight, of course, is a male category. Dame would be for a woman, like Dame Judi Dench. This order of the British Empire was created in early 1900s for people who are in the arts. So it's just a way to recognize their talents and their contributions over their lifetime. There are 5 different classes. So the knight and the dame is number 2. There's even a better one than that. You probably have to do something extraordinary. And then she's one of these classes. One of it's the 4th class to be an officer of the Order of the British Empire. It's a very prestigious award. Empire is a word we use to talk about a set of states or countries or things that one a government is over. We always would say the British Empire. They not only had England, they had other countries that were assumed to be British as well, that they controlled, that they ruled over. We use empire. I think we use empire what? With Japan? Because they have an emperor.
Back in the day.
Yeah, an emperor. They still have an emperor today. So, yeah. She got a really wonderful, though, award when she became officer of the Order of the British Empire.
And 1 year after her death in 1942, the Canadian government named her a person of national historic significance.
Yeah.
Significance here just means worthy of attention. It's significant.
It's important.
It's important. We should remember her, and her works are still treasured and widely read around the world. And maybe you can check out some of her books as well. I sound interested as well, even though, as I said at the beginning of the program, these sound like chick novels, but guys can enjoy them too. Okay, that brings us to the end of our lesson for today. Here comes our Chinese teacher.
接着我们来看到第3段，1911年这个作者呢就跟牧师结婚了。第3段的第2个句子提到 They moved to Ontario, Canada, and had 3 sons, one of whom was still born. 在这里要特别介绍这个句型的概念，也就是呢，他们搬到了安大略省，然后有了3个儿子。在这里我们要补充说明 one of whom， 其中这3个儿子当中，其中之一呢 was still born。在这里的 still born 是形容词，解释成为死胎的意思。当然，这对妈妈来讲是一个很大的打击。后面的句子提到This tragedy, along with an unhappy marriage, deeply affected Montgomery. Tragedy 在这里讲的就是悲剧，这个悲剧跟随着不愉快、不美满的婚姻呢，也就深深的影响到 Montgomery。Tragedy 我们常常解释成为悲剧，也可以解释成为悲剧性的事件。The traffic accident is really a tragedy. 也就是说，这次的车祸真是个悲剧。而后面的动词用了 affect， 则是指使感动，尤其是指到情绪上面的感动。举个例子来说，他父亲去世的消息使得他深受震动。我们就可以说 She was deeply affected by the news of her father's death. 她深受了影响。后面的句子继续提到 Her publisher also cheated her out of royalties, leading to a lawsuit that she eventually won. 在这里提到呢，她的出版商呢也骗取她的版税，然后呢引发了一场最后得胜的诉讼。接着我们来看到文章的倒数第2个句子。One year after her death in 1942, the Canadian government named her a person of national historic significance. 其实呢，在她去世1年之后，那么加拿大政府就将她选为国家历史的风云人物。在这里的 significance 也就是指重要性的意思。OK， 以上就是今天的课文讲解，谢谢收听。
That's the end of our program, but we're still going to continue talking about Anne of Green Gables in our next program, so please join us then. From all of us here at English Digest, I'm Tom.
I'm Stephanie.
Goodbye.
Bye.